Hi, I'm Krista Fiolleau, Associate Professor at the School of Accounting and Finance at the University of Waterloo. I will be presenting a paper that is co-authored with Associate Professor Leslie Berger and Carolyn McTavish from Wilfrid Laurier and was published in the Journal of Management Accounting Research. The title of the paper is I Know Something You Don't Know, the Effect of Relative Performance Information and Individual Performance Incentives on Knowledge Sharing. Now, companies implement many different incentives and organizational features, often in an attempt to incentivize their workers to either work harder and/or to work smarter. Our project looks at two of these such features. One, relative performance information. Now, this is feedback to individuals about their performance relative to that of their peers. The second is individual performance-based incentives, and this is often thought of as pay for performance. So we, in our study, examine how these features may have unintended consequences on employees' sharing, focusing on what we call counterproductive sharing. So for us, counterproductive sharing is defined as either failing to share information that you have with your peers or sharing inaccurate information with those peers. So what do? Well, we run an experiment with 248 student participants where they navigate their way through a maze to get our mouse Pinky to his cheese. Once they've learned the path and have validated that they have the correct directions for Pinky, they then watch our computer student go through that exact same maze. At each step of the maze, the computer will ask our participants if they'd like to share the directions with the student completing the maze. The student participant can provide a correct direction of right, left, or straight. They can decline to share information, or they can share inaccurate information with that computer student that's currently completing the maze. We randomly assigned our participants across 4 experimental conditions in which we varied the presence and absence of relative performance information, and where we've also varied the presence and absence of incentive pay. It's important to point out that in our setting, participants were not paid based on their relative performance information. This was only presented for their information. In addition, none of the pay that our participants received was contingent on the pay or performance of any other participant in the lab. So what did we find? Well, through our experiment, our participants engaged in more counterproductive knowledge sharing behavior. So this was either lack of sharing information or sharing incorrect information when they were presented with relative performance information than when this was absent. Further, when both relative performance information and individual incentives were present, we saw the highest frequency of this counterproductive behavior. So what does this potentially mean for us in practice? Well, knowledge sharing is critical to the success of many organizations. It can increase efficiency and it can increase creativity within an organization. Our paper suggests that when companies are implementing incentive systems and performance enhancing tools within the organization, like relative performance information and individual performance incentives, they need to think holistically about how this will affect other aspects of their employees' actions. There may be counterproductive effects to the use or combination of use of these tools in their environment, especially where sharing of information between employees is important. It may be useful for organizations to monitor metrics other than simply output performance effects when implementing these tools to possibly detect any adverse effects that these may have on the collaboration and sharing behavior of their employees. Thank you so much for your time and listening to my presentation of my paper.